How do you choose which presentation software is right for your church? We'll talk about it today. Hey, ministry leader, welcome to Your Visuals Matter. This is the podcast where we're talking with ministry leaders just like you who are working to visually communicate the gospel. Now, you may not know where to start when it comes to having great design and video at your church. You may have a team, but there's so many needs of design and video that your team is burning out. Or you might be that team member that's frying out right now. Well, I'm talking to you. I'm here to help you. I'm going to guide you through in this season of the podcast how to start from scratch when it comes to setting up your space to show media on screen. And we're on a roadmap for you to know how to take your design and video to the next level. Why? Because it's not just about looking awesome. In fact, I don't care, and I'm not sure if you do, that you need to look great just to look great, or look awesome just to look awesome. Your visuals matter because visuals engage your audience to give you a pathway to share Jesus with them. How you present the gospel to your people equates to how they receive the gospel. To help you communicate the story of the gospel, your visuals matter. You want to see people come to know Jesus, and you want to see believers grow in their walk with Jesus. We've talked about how the Bible is an example of how we should use visuals. We've talked about the history of creativity in the church. We've talked about how to start if you have no screens in your auditorium and why you should use visual media in your church. Well, this week we're going to walk through how to choose the best presentation software for your church. And there's several on the market. There's ProPresenter, there's MediaShout, there's EasyWorship, there's Proclaim, and others. And we're going to look at the pros and cons of each and give you some recommendations. So all that and more is coming right up. Hey guys, on today's episode, I welcome Michael Montanari. Michael is the production director at Connection Point Church in Brownsburg, Indiana. He's a veteran in the church media space. He's also very familiar with all of the presentation software on the market today. So we're going to review each. We're going to do some pros and cons of some leading presentation software. We'll give you a general overview of each. We'll also kind of rate each with a fun little rating scale, just to give you a good idea of each of the presentation software on the market that you can choose from to help your church present your visuals and communicate the gospel well. So here's my conversation with Michael Montanari. Michael, welcome. Thanks for being here, man.
Absolutely. No problem. Glad to be here.
All right. So, man, really appreciate you. So you're in Brownsburg, right? Give me a little taste of the community and, man, tell me a little bit about your church.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm at Connection Point Church, which is in the western suburbs of Indianapolis, in a little town called Brownsburg, actually a very fast growing town. This area is really, really growing super fast. And it's awesome. The church itself has been around since like 1837. It was called Brownsburg Christian Church for a long time. And then in the early 2000s, the current senior pastor really, it started to grow and, it's changed names to Connection Point, and the previous senior pastor retired about 5 years ago. Our current senior pastor, John Dickerson, came in and, has really taken it to the next level. I just, started work here about 3 years ago.
Okay.
So I moved right in the middle of COVID, from the Chicagoland area down to here. So that was fun.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's been amazing for that was not a multi-site church up until about a year and a half ago. And, we're really starting to branch out. We have one campus out running right now, and 2 more kind of in the works. One's kind of under construction. The other one's just kind of getting the plan started. So we're growing quickly and really loving it here.
So tell me a little bit, before you came to this church, what was your background before that?
So I've been in the church production world basically my entire life. I mean, I started doing church production at a church in Buffalo, New York, which is where I'm originally from, at like 12, when we had like a television ministry. So it was a pretty, even back in those days, it was a pretty serious production church. And then I got a job in Chicagoland at a church called Christ Community Church, and I was there for almost 15 years as the production director. And then kind of really felt like I needed to, God was calling me somewhere else, and found the position down here at Connection Point, and it's been awesome. So yeah, I've been a church production director for 18 years basically. So it's pretty much been my whole career.
Well, with that experience, one thing I'd really like to tackle in this episode is how to choose your presentation software. So there's multiple presentation software on the market, and I kind of want to walk through and do a general overview. We're going to have a lot of fun doing some review work here. So I want to kind of review each on the market. In the coming weeks, I'm going to have folks on the team, on staff at ProPresenter and EasyWorship, MediaShout, to kind of give the perspective of an overview from their perspective. But I wanted to have you on as just kind of an overview. I want to kind of review each just kind of as a third party, kind of review me and you kind of looking at the scene, at the marketplace in general, and kind of seeing what's out there, seeing what might be a great fit for churches. So maybe kind of list out, if you would, maybe some presentation software that you've used in the past, and just kind of an overview experience of you kind of touching on different presentation software over the years.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, ProPresenter has been my main, my mainstay for quite a while. Previous to ProPresenter, I think at Christ Community, when I first got there, we were PowerPoint, and then we pretty much jumped into ProPresenter. I have used MediaShout a couple of times in the past. I think it was EasyWorship that I used for a kind of a side gig I did one time at a small church. I mean, like I said, I will definitely admit that I am mostly a ProPresenter person. I definitely tend to lean towards the industry standard. And what is the popular thing, unless there's a reason for me not to, even in equipment choices and things like that at my church, I tend to kind of say, well, let's start with what would be considered industry standard. And then if there's a reason for us to veer off of that, then I'm totally fine with that. But I think I just try and, land somewhere in the middle of the bell curve.
So how have you gone about in years past, maybe investigating presentation software at different churches and different ministries, whether that is just kind of look at the industry standard and kind of go with that for a bit, or, have you taken some time and investigated these over the years to kind of find out which is right for the church that you're serving?
Yeah, there's definitely been times in the past where we've investigated, other options. Definitely when ProPresenter kind of made the switch to subscription, everybody was a little freaked out by that. So a lot of us did some investigations into what other, products were out there and things like that. There's always been some must-have features. The churches that I've been at, they've always been larger churches, and we've been a little high production value. And so a lot of it is interfacing with other equipment that we have and other systems that we have. And so, that's always been something that is important to us. But I would say on the average, for the average church, that may not be that important. And it's more probably user friendliness and honestly cost and budget, I think, is a huge part of it. I've even investigated going to like broadcast level graphics packages and things like that. And, after quite a bit of research and demos and things like that, just said, we're going to stay where we're at. It's definitely not perfect. ProPresenter is definitely not perfect, but at least for us right now, it's working really, really well. And it's been fun prepping for this podcast to kind of really take another dive into some of these other products. And there's some really cool features in some of these products that I think we'll get to in a few minutes here that I'm excited to at least see. And, I kind of nudged my video director the other day and showed him a couple of things. And he was like, man, why doesn't ProPresenter do that? So it was, there's always options out there. And there's definitely, I think it's every couple of years you need to kind of take a step back and look at what there is and make sure you're not missing out on a feature that really fits your church, because I think that's what it is what fits your church the best.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so that's what I really want to tackle is we'll have some recommendations and stuff, but I really want to dive into really ProPresenter, EasyWorship, MediaShout, those three in particular. Yep. I think we'll talk about Proclaim a little bit. But kind of almost the same list of questions for you on each one. And then I want to do a little rating scale, right? I want to do price, then volunteer, user friendliness, and then would I use this at my church? So we're going to rate it based on 0 to 10 play buttons on each of those. Yep. Okay. So we'll kind of put some things up to kind of keep an eye on our rating score here. But let's talk ProPresenter first. Let's kind of hit that one first. Okay. So again, ProPresenter is kind of an industry standard, kind of considered the standard out there, definitely for Mac houses. But kind of give me an overview of ProPresenter. What do you think? Just kind of give me your general thoughts.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not been around the longest. I'm 90% sure MediaShout has been around longer, but they've been around for a while. It is, I'm pretty sure it was originally built by a bunch of guys from the North Point media team that were kind of looking for, a solution for them. And so it's always been purpose built for the church, and some of these others have as well. I think they've always done a good job of making sure that it was right down the middle of a media player and a presentation, lyrics and things like that software. A lot of churches, it is their entire presentation system, playing back videos, playing back slides, audio, walk-in and walk-out music. It can handle a lot of different things. I think the latest version, once they kind of got all the bugs worked out and kind of got everybody landed and situated in the new system and the new format, has been amazing. We use a ton of outputs and different feeds and different things like that. We are using it in 4K in one situation, and it's been working great. We are Mac and PC, so we have both within our facility and have had no real problems either way. And so, I think it is definitely purpose built for the church. I know of some schools and things like that have tried to use it because, the AV teacher goes to a church and he uses it there. And it's in those situations, I don't think it shines as brightly because it really is built around what we do at a church. Like I said, it's definitely not perfect, but I think it's, in my opinion, it's doing exactly what I want it to do. It's been very stable, and the features continue to grow. With the new model, love it or hate it, there's a lot of updates, which can be problematic. But if you manage the updates correctly, there's constantly new features, and there's things even just in the last 2 weeks that we've seen in the new version that were really, man, that's a huge upgrade. That's going to help us in this way or that way. And it's been fun to kind of see it evolve.
So what are and you've mentioned a few, but what are some pros that hey, this is huge benefits for ProPresenter?
Right. I think for churches that have staff, because it's an industry standard, when you bring a staff person in, like a new video director or a new production director, they're most likely going to already know it, or at least be familiar with it. It's easy to put that on a job description of hey, familiarity or expert familiarity with ProPresenter. If you bring an outside group in, it's just going to be odds are it's going to be a little more useful. For us specifically, some of the pros, like the 4K support, all the multiple outputs and multiple output layers is a big deal. Alpha channel is absolutely a must for us in our situation. But once again, some of these features may just not be as relevant to other churches. The multiple stage display outputs and then different layouts within those in our particular world is great. We change stage display layouts between songs, between announcements, between the message, and even we have different stage display layouts for different speakers. So our senior pastor versus our teaching pastor has different stage display layouts, and so being able to organize all that and kind of trigger all those things is a big deal. The remote features, so Rosstalk, MIDI, timecode, even now for some of our campuses, we're using timecode triggering into ProPresenter. The new macros feature, that it's not new, but it's relatively new, has been a kind of game changer in as far as the speed of setting up a presentation and kind of getting all of our triggers and timers and things like that set up. The live video input is something we use quite a bit, not in our main auditorium, but around the building. So if somebody wants to bring a laptop in and plug it into the system, we actually just live input them to ProPresenter. So ProPresenter almost acts like a switcher in some of our rooms throughout our facility. NDI with Alpha Channel is a huge feature we use to get lyrics to our center LED wall. If we're not doing a lyric video, then we just take an NDI feed from ProPresenter, but with Alpha Channel, and we can easily layer that into our center LED wall. Resi integration is a great feature. It's not something that we use, but I think for some churches that is a big deal, that they can use, ProPresenter to actually encode up to Resi.
What do you guys use for streaming?
We are using Resi, but we have a Resi encoder, like a hardware encoder. So, but for those are not cheap boxes. They're awesome and they're super stable, but they're not cheap. And so, the Resi integration from ProPresenter I think for some people could be a real benefit. We have actually dabbled in using the web remote too, more so just for our service producer to kind of see where the graphics op is and to make sure they're not going to click the wrong thing or kind of save them if they're having issues. It's not fully baked out yet as far as I'm concerned, but I think it's a cool feature that could really save you if you really have nothing else to do. Those are probably all the main features I think that we're, highlighting.
So let's hit on some negatives. What are some things that you'd like to do, but you can't do with ProPresenter?
I was really thinking about this. I think a negative, maybe not a feature, but just a negative for some people is the price of it. I think it's a little more on the expensive side. You definitely need a machine that can run it. It doesn't have to be a rock star machine, but I wouldn't put it on a 2013 Mac or something like that. You're just you're kind of asking for trouble. As far as features, I don't know. I was talking to my video director about this, and we couldn't really pinpoint something that we're like, oh man, if only they would make it do this, it would be great. It's kind of hard to brainstorm those things that we're missing because we're so deep in that world. Like I don't want to overly taint this review, but in a sense, we're so deep into ProPresenter that we build our process around ProPresenter. Right. So in some ways, we don't know what we're missing because it's what we have. You know what I mean? Which maybe is a bad thing, but I think one of the other things that really, I think ProPresenter needs to be careful with, and maybe it's even more so the user base, is updates. I am extremely, extremely nervous about updates. I love them, but we are slow to update. We actually have a test machine in our office that we will, put the newest update on and just beat it up for a while.
That's a great idea.
We've definitely found things. My team knows, my hard and fast rule is we do not do any updates to production machines past Tuesday.
It's great.
It just doesn't happen.
I was about to say absolutely no on Sunday.
Yeah. No. Past Tuesday, I won't. We're not going to do it. And so I kind of wish Renewed Vision would almost say that, and say, hey, we're only dropping updates on Monday, and we encourage you to install it by Wednesday, just to help. There's some small churches, and the production director, he might not even be getting paid. It's part-time at best. And it's just not his world. And so he's like, oh, cool. It's not their fault. It's right. And so I wish, because this is a church centric thing and they know exactly what it's being used for, I just wish that they would really encourage people to hey, it's coming out on Mondays. Monday's update day. If you can't get there on Monday, do it by Tuesday. If not, wait till the next week, or do it on Sunday after your services. Before you leave, run the update and mess around with it for half an hour, because if you have to go to work during the week, that's totally fine. I tell people that all the time. My biggest thing it seems like every year it's like Easter week, and like Wednesday or Thursday there'll be like a ProPresenter update, and I'm just like, why? Why would you do this? Because I get it. Like, we're all like, ooh, I wonder what's in it. You know what I mean? And I'm like,
Yeah.
put it on the test machine. Don't even look at it on the other machines. Just ignore it. You know, like, we're just not doing it. So, yeah, I that's one thing that having constant updates, the con of that is you just never know what it's going to break. And I don't blame Renewed Vision. I mean, software development is tough. There's a lot of complexity to what this software does. And so I just think it's some of the onus is on the users to don't just stick your neck out there and grab an update the day it drops and it's a Saturday or a Sunday morning or something like that. I think that's a huge thing.
I think that's a great rule of thumb. And I think that this could probably lead us into a con for Renewed Vision, in that I'm wondering if they should spend more time. Like when they went from 6 to 7, it was such a huge jump. Yep. That I think it made a lot of people nervous, especially working with volunteers, that it was just such a big, huge update. How did your team take to that?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, we were very slow to change. Once again, I am always somebody who's going to like, I think the biggest part of a production director's job, or even just the production team, if you really boil it down, a lot of our job is risk management, you know? And so I was like, hey, yeah, let's buy the ProPresenter license. Let's get all set up. But once again, we're going to put it on a test machine and we're going to fool around with it. And we're going to, test it out in the wedding chapel. We're going to try it here and we're going to try it there. And let's install it on, another user of our main machine. But let's, we probably took a month, until we were really comfortable with it. We brought our volunteers in and kind of said, hey, volunteers get used to something and they're really, really used to it. And they may be really, really good at it, but this isn't their job. And so they're not, sitting at home. Well, not all, but most of them are not sitting at home every night on YouTube like, whoa, what's the latest? How do we use ProPresenter 7? That's just not their thing. They're doing whatever their vocation is. And so I didn't want to throw that right at our people. But once we kind of got through it and we realized the new features and how things worked, and like kind of saw the vision of like, okay, I see where they're going with this. I see why this is going to be beneficial. We jumped to it, but it was not a quick thing. I think that's, and it's definitely an advantage that we have as typically a bigger organization, is we have the resources to take our time a little bit with some of these things. We could build out a little test machine, but even your personal machine at home or whatever, just install the unlicensed version on it and screw with it. I think it's important to know where it's going. I think Renewed Vision probably could even do a better job with, saying, hey, this version really has these features in it and these fixes. So if you're having this problem, this is going to fix it. If you're having this problem, this isn't quite going to, just so that people aren't like, okay, well, we just have to install the latest version. Our main presentation machines in our main room are usually at least 1 or 2 versions behind at any given time. And we have a sign, literally a sticky note on the machine, like on the that tells people if an update pops up, please click ignore. We train our volunteers that. In some ways, here's a feature that we have actually talked about that I'm just remembering. I wish, especially if you have campus licenses, there was a management console that you could see all of the licenses, the version that they are on, and you could like click a button to take like enterprise control of updates. And so it wouldn't ping each machine for updates, but from a central location with the login for the license, I could say, okay, now give this machine the option for the update. And then you go to that machine and click,
turn off notifications.
Basically, like per license, you could say turn off update notifications. You know what I mean? But then you could also see, oh, they're on this version. The current version here is this. And we could kind of manage all of our machines. Currently right now we have 5 campus licenses because we ran out. I think they're limited to 20 on a campus license now, which I understand. Unlimited was getting a little out of control. So I think we have 2 or 3 campus licenses at our main building just to have enough machines for it. And then 1 for each of the other locations that are kind of either happening or up and coming. And so it's a lot of machines to manage, and our video director, who's kind of in charge of those machines, does a great job of it. But there's times where somebody in Student Ministries clicks that update button, and then all of a sudden something's broken. And so that would be an amazing feature, is a backdoor control. It would also be awesome if it showed like the health of ProPresenter, like, hey, there's this much hard drive space left on this machine in the media bin, things like that. Hey, there's 25 gig of media that hasn't been used in over a year. Like I'm not expecting it to clean itself up, but that gives me, oh, hey, we need to go look at that machine. We need to go. So I think that would be an amazing feature set, would be some, enterprise level central management style features would be a huge upgrade for ProPresenter.
That's a great idea, man. You're hired, I'm sure.
There we go.
Over there. Okay, so give people an idea of the cost of ProPresenter. So one thing I'm trying to do with this podcast is really start people out on an elementary level. How do I get from 0 to 1.0 and then 1 to 2.0 and then kind of enhance as I go. So give people the cost, all the costs involved for you on a ProPresenter.
Right. So there's two different ways to get into ProPresenter. There's the single license, or the single seat license, which is like $400. I think it's $399.99, which is a one-time cost. And then you can install that on one machine, and it's fully functional. And that includes 1 year of the Pro P Plus support, which I think is worth doing if you can afford it. I think it's worth, keeping the updates available, having their support, which is good. And I have used it, and they do respond well, and they do what they need to do. And I think that's great for a lot of churches, because they do also have the free version that watermarks, but you can use that to create presentations all day long. And so, I've worked with a few churches in the past that were like, oh, we can't afford a site license for ProPresenter. And I said, how many computers are you actually using in live production? Oh, well, just the one in the tech booth on Sundays. Okay. Then buy the license for that, and then have your worship leader and whoever does your pastor's notes, or maybe it's them, download the free version, keep it up to date. They can do everything in there. They can export Pro P bundles, all that kind of stuff. But if they do a presentation, there's just a watermark on it, which doesn't really matter. And so I think that's why they set that up, is it's basically for editors. And so I think that's a great option for a lot of people. The campus license, which is very, very nice and convenient, it's $1,000 initial cost to get into. And that includes the first year of the support. And then it's like $470, I think, a year after that to keep the support and update going. It's a chunk of change. There's no question about it. We have plenty of software that's cheaper, and we do have plenty of software that's more expensive. And for the central role that ProPresenter plays in my church, it's absolutely worth it. I think it's absolutely worth it for the feature set that it has and for the things that it can do for us. It's not a hard pill to swallow. It's definitely not even close to on the chopping block from a budget perspective. There's a million other things that would get cut first. But I also understand that for some churches and some organizations, it's just not feasible. And so either the single license or, as we go down the list here, some of these other products just might be the right thing for you. And right. In the end, if you don't need all the extra features and things like that, it may not be the right thing for you. If you don't really care about having industry standard, if you're only on PC and it's not a big deal. Now, like I said, we use ProPresenter cross-platform, and other than some font issues, and that's not ProPresenter's fault, we really don't have any major problems. The PC version is only limited in that it only does MIDI for any kind of external control. But outside of our main room, that's not really a problem. So,
all right, so let's do our rating system here on a scale of 0 to 10 play buttons. Give us a price rating.
I did some pre-work here, and I selected a 5 for that, just because I think it's right in the middle. For some people, it's not a big deal. For some people, it's a complete deal breaker. So I think it's right down the middle. That's how I'm going to look at it. Like I said, for me, it is a no-brainer cost. For other people, it's just like, oh man, we just can't. And I totally get that and respect that. And I think there's absolutely a solution for you in that.
What about user friendliness for volunteers?
I put 8. I've never had a volunteer that just like, hey, this person just can't seem to figure this out. But at the same time, in my world, they're not building the presentation. They're not configuring all the controls. They're really coming in, opping it, maybe going, oh yeah, we got to add a chorus on this song. They had it wrong in Planning Center or whatever it is. But we, as the staff, are building the presentation ahead of time and checking through it and things like that. So if it was a completely volunteer run church, that number may go down, because with a lot of features comes complexity. So but that for me in my world, it's an 8.
All right. Obviously, we know the answer to this one, but would you use it at your church?
Yeah, I mean, I put 9 because, like, there's always, who knows, there could be the Pro P, killer in the next couple of years, and maybe it's in our list right now. So I'm not going to put a 10 and just say like there's nothing else ever out there. It's been fun to kind of take a dive into some of these other pieces of software, but for us right now, it's what's working, and it would take something amazing to pull us away from it.
Okay, so let's move to EasyWorship. All right, I know you did some research on some of these others. So let's talk EasyWorship. Give me kind of an overview. What do you think? What's your general review of EasyWorship?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I downloaded EasyWorship and got around it without much of a problem. Seems like it does what you would expect it to do. You can drop media in, you can create text slides and song lyrics with some level of organization. You can build a script for the week, click through your slides. You can output to multiple things. There is a stage feedback output, so your musicians on stage or your pastor on stage can kind of see. I think they call it foldback in their software. It's definitely more limited than ProPresenter or some of the other software, but it definitely has everything in there you expect. It took all the media that I tried to put in it, so I threw a couple different video files in there, and it took all that. I wasn't able to try like a media file with alpha channel on it, which is something we use a lot of. I did actually like the way that they have the preview area and the live area, so you can kind of build a presentation, put it into preview, and even see the transitions and things like that. And it's not going live. I think that's actually a really cool feature that I appreciated. So yeah, but I mean, it's not like, oh man, it's unusable. It's totally usable. It presents media files and graphics to a screen. So yeah, I think it definitely works.
What are some? You mentioned some pros. What are some cons, or kind of give me your pro con list?
Sure. Other pros that I saw, they have the remote app, which is always a nice thing, especially for a smaller church like me. I worked with a church a couple of years ago that it's the worship leader. Like, I mean, it's them. That's it. So like they build the presentation and they have an iPad or their phone sitting on the music stand, and like they are literally like tapping to go to the next slide. That's a great feature. And other software has that, but this definitely has that. There's MIDI integration, which is nice because then you can link machines together. So if you have like center screen, side screen, or whatever you need to do, you could link together a foot pedal for your worship leader to advance it. There's things like that. So having MIDI integration in some way just gives you a lot more options. NDI IO is a good option or a good thing. We use it in a couple of scenarios. If you're trying to stream like over OBS or something like that, it makes it easy to get your video into OBS without having to go through some rigmarole there. The UI seemed really simple, the user interface, and just I was able to figure it out pretty quickly. And then Stream Deck support is a great thing. We love Stream Decks. We usually use them through Companion, but having a direct Stream Deck support is always a great thing. The cons list, I put PC only. Not a huge deal for me because I truly straddle the line. Like my daily driver is a PC, but there's certain things that I'm like, yeah, we'll use a Mac for that. But for some people, some hardcore people, that's just like an absolute deal breaker, which to me is unfortunate, but I mean, I get it. The stage display or their foldback seems a little limited, as far as like different layouts and different clocks and timers and things like that. I think that can be really helpful, especially for churches that just don't have a lot of planning process. It can be really good to give your people on stage a sense of like how long you've been up there and what the expectation is of how long you are up there and things like that, just to kind of keep the service moving. If you're a church that's like, no way, man, we're going as long as it takes, that's great. Turn all the timers off. But I think having the flexibility to have those things, and some speakers that I've dealt with like have to have a clock because they just get so self-conscious that they're going long that they freak out and they might not even go along. So I deal with quite a few speakers who are like, no, I have to have a clock somewhere. No direct SDI output support that I could find. Like if you have to go through the video card and go through conversion, which isn't a huge deal. But once again, my whole world is SDI. If you're in Blackmagic world, typically you can go in HDMI, but that can come with some weird things occasionally. So that's just a feature that for me is like, oh man, it doesn't look like you could like address a decklink card directly from EasyWorship. You would need to come out like HDMI or DVI and then convert over to SDI. So yeah, that was kind of the cons list that I put together.
Why would you use EasyWorship over something else? Is there something as you downloaded it that you're like, yeah, this would take me over?
Yeah, I mean, cost for sure. We can go over the cost later, but it's definitely much more affordable than some of the other software. Simplicity, like if you're just like, yeah, we're downloading, songs off CCLI Song Select, and I think they had their own song library as well, which was kind of nice. If you don't have a CCLI membership, and we're just dropping them in there, yeah, we want 4 lines per slide. It's totally fine. It's just up there for lyrics. We're not putting it over iMag. We're not doing any of that kind of stuff. We want to drop a pretty background in and just roll some slides, and our pastor is going to create some slides and like maybe PowerPoint. I think this has PowerPoint import. It's going to work for you, and it's going to be inexpensive. It's very easy to use. So yeah, I mean, it definitely fits a niche there, or a niche there that I think a lot of people would be, it would fit the bill for them perfectly.
You mentioned this a little bit, but what are some things about the interface that you liked or didn't like?
Yeah, it was nice and clean. Like there wasn't, that's one thing that could freak people out with, say, like ProPresenter. If you're not when you sit down in front of it that first time, there's a lot of things happening around there, especially if you have like the media bin that's cracked open and things like that. It can be a little overwhelming for people. And so keeping a clean UI for this purpose, I think really is a positive. And I think it fit that bill. The preview area is another thing I really liked about the interface. I think that's just a cool feature. I mean, that's, ProPresenter, that could be a cool feature of a way to like do a test presentation. We're sitting on a slide. It's happened to us before where we're sitting on a slide like pre-service and they want to make a change at the last second. In our world, we're able to like freeze that onto the screens and things like that and go offline and it stays there. But somebody else might not have those resources. And so it's hard to do live editing without accidentally clicking a slide in ProPresenter, where you could like go into preview mode, like this kind of has this preview area. That is a very useful, cool feature that I think was neat to see and kind of play around with. And once again, I like tapped my video director, was like, check this out, like this kind of a neat thing. We were both like, well, yeah, I mean, there's definitely things about it that would make it harder for us to personally use just because of feature set, but we are on the far side of power users, so. Yeah.
Is there anything that you were looking for that you could not find?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, nothing that I was like really expecting to find. I would say the thing that I was probably looking for that I didn't find was like decklink card or Aja card support. Okay. Now maybe it's there and I just couldn't find it, but I didn't. Being a power user of software, I usually am very good to find those sort of things and just wasn't able to figure that out. There was a couple spots too where the UI, while it was clean, it has a little bit of a dated feel, which doesn't really matter in functionality. But you get some high school student sits down behind that to run it, and if they look at it and they go, "Well, this old software," like it's not ancient looking, but it's a little bit dated, and so that has nothing to do with the functionality of it or even the usability of it, but it can just give the person who's utilizing it might just throw them off a little bit and feel like it's older software. It's not like it's old, ancient, but it has a little bit older look to it.
All right. So break down the cost for me on all things EasyWorship?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So they have a basic and premium option. The basic is like $180 a year, so it is a subscription model, but that includes all the support and everything like that. The premium option is $280 a year. I'm rounding up the penny here for both these things. And I think with premium, you just got a few more output options. I think it added Alpha Channel as an option, and I think it had some baked in media that you could download that they offer. And that's pretty much it. All their support is baked into that cost. Updates are baked into that cost. And so I think that's pretty reasonable. It's one of those situations where I think it's a cost benefit thing. Yes, you're at $180 a year. So after a few years, you start to equal out. At some point, you're going to, cross over some of the other software in a cost perspective. But if it's a cash flow thing for your ministry and it's like, man, we can only do this a year, like this is totally a legitimate option, I think.
All right, let's get into our rating scale. On price, how many play buttons did you give it?
I gave it 8. Yeah, I think it's for what it does. I think that's a really reasonable price. $280 a year for the premium option, I think is legit. I bet a lot of other churches spend more than that on other yearly subscriptions of things, and doesn't play as central of a role in your services as this would.
Okay, what about volunteer user friendliness?
I gave it a 7. Like I said, I got around it pretty fast. Like I said, the UI being just a little bit dated looking, once again, doesn't mess with functionality, but I just feel like you sit a high schooler or a college student down behind it, and they're going to be like, what? A little put off by it. Which once again, doesn't affect the functionality, but they might not be as excited to dive into it and be using it.
All right. Would you use this at a church that you serve?
The church that I currently serve at, I put like a 4. There might be a spot for it at some point somewhere, but once again, because we are a little bit larger and because we're already paying for that campus license of ProPresenter, we can install that in other places and kind of keep everybody centralized on one system. But once again, man, if it's right for your church, it's great software.
Good. All right, let's move to MediaShout. All right, we got 2 more we want to cover here. So look, give me an overview of MediaShout.
Sure. Once again, I think it seems fully featured. I know MediaShout's been around a long time. We had a youth pastor at my previous church come in, starting his job, and he was like hardcore MediaShout. And so he used that in student ministries for a while and everything worked fine. Eventually we kind of migrated to ProPresenter, but it was good. I've definitely talked to other people that have really liked MediaShout. So, it has all the same things. It has all the same features that you would expect. It does what you need it to do. They're all similar. You're building slides, you're building presentations, putting those slides and presentations into a script and being able to play those back with some sort of transitions and mixed media. So it's a video, it's an audio file, it's graphics, it's photos, all, edited and built into a presentation. It's PowerPoint on a little bit more steroids, a little more live event specific PowerPoint plus multimedia, I think is a great thing.
All right, walk through your pro con list on MediaShout.
Yeah, to me the biggest con is there's no downloadable demo that I could find. I think so I really couldn't sit down and use it. I had to kind of watch videos on it and things like that. So if I was shopping for software, I don't want to pick on MediaShout, but like if you go to their website, their main action item to find out more information is to call a phone number. And so that's just a little weird for this day and age to, if you watch a video from MediaShout on YouTube and they're like, does this. If you want more information, call us at, and it was like, whoa, that's really bizarre. Like there's not a demo. There's not, a 30-day free trial, nothing like that. Maybe there is, and I just couldn't find it. But once again, I would consider myself a power user, and I was not able to find it with some actual digging through their website. So I think that's a big miss. And maybe if you call, they'll send you a link and there's a demo. It wasn't able to do that. Some of the other pro that I put, it seems very straightforward to create presentations. Like, they did have like a 7-minute walkthrough on just creating a Sunday presentation that I watched, and it was very quick. It was very straightforward. It wasn't revolutionary in as far as compared to some other of these software, but it definitely it did everything you wanted it to do. There were some speedy things from a Bible verse perspective that you could pull in Bible verses pretty quickly and things like that if you're creating a presentation. So it did all that, and that switching over to the con side. And once again, some of these things I may be incorrect on because I was not able to actually get my hands on the software itself. But I could not find any mention of alpha channel outputs. I really couldn't find any mention of MIDI, which to me, that would be a big miss. And I would be surprised if it wasn't there, but I just could not necessarily find it. I didn't see a remote option for like an iPad or tablet or phone remote. It seemed like you could do multiple outputs, like if you had a center LED wall that was just lyrics and then a not LED wall, center screen, side screen. So you would want to have different layouts, but that was still really I just couldn't really understand how that was going to work. NDI wasn't there, which isn't a huge deal for most people, but it can be convenient. PC only, which like I said, for myself, not a problem. Like I like both platforms, but for some hardcore Mac users, they're just, it's just not going to happen. And then the way that they have a lot of features and they call them plugins. So they're like little add-on sections that just seemed like a clunky way to do, what other software just does. Like, oh, you want a special transition? Well, you have to use a plugin. Oh, if you want to, have more control over a video or like be able to clip the ins and outs of a video or something like that, you have to use this plugin thing. And maybe that just the terminology plugin for a lot of people that triggers like a third party thing, a third party app, or, oh, I have to download the module. Like when you use the word plugin, I immediately was like, oh, so I have to like download extra components when I need to use them. And that just kind of threw me for a loop there. So those were the things that I found. Once again, like it does what it's supposed to do. It does the presentation thing, but there were just some weird things. And clearly I'm coming at it from a perspective of a mostly ProPresenter user. So I don't want to over taint it, but I just think that just seemed weird to me.
What about the UI? How intuitive was the UI? How you mentioned EasyWorship felt a little dated to you. What about MediaShout in that realm?
I think MediaShout was a little better on that perspective. The whole plugin thing with those modules being kind of off to the right, just that did not seem as intuitive to me. Once again, I didn't actually get my hands on it. I had to kind of watch other people on it and kind of look at, videos on their website and things like that. I'm not going to say that it was bad, but it seemed a little bit more unusual than I would expect. Funny enough, it definitely, from the last time that I physically used MediaShout, it has migrated more towards what I would call like ProPresenter like UI. The layout is very similar, and it didn't used to be, as far as I remember. It's been a while, but I remember it being quite a different layout. And so I think that says something of like, hey, yeah, we're kind of all converging into a very similar thing, just like Digital Audio Workstation or Microsoft Office versus Google Docs. They all are kind of beginning to just look alike because everybody realizes that there's one really good UI to be able to do whatever that thing is.
Right. Okay. Any other feature sets or benefits or cons you want to get into before we talk cost?
Yeah, not really. Yeah, nothing that stood out to me. I don't know their update, regularity and how often they update. One thing I will say, I was, trying to look through this sitting in my office, and one of my other production group members, I said, oh, I'm trying to get to MediaShout. And she goes, oh, what version are they on? And I said 7. She goes, they're still on 7, and so she knew a little bit more than me about it. And she was like, wow, I'm kind of surprised. Once again, I'm not trying to put down MediaShout. It's a perception thing. The reality of it may be amazing, but my perception and the unfortunate ability of not being able to like download it and use it, unlicensed or watermarked or something, or a 30-day free demo, that was a little bit of a hard thing.
Okay. Walk me through cost.
Sure. So according to their website, a single seat license was $400. One-time cost. A site license is only $440. So I would definitely go, if you're going to go there, I would just spend the $40 and get the site license. And then there is a $150 a year plus membership, which this was a little bit of a weird one to me. Without the plus membership, they do not have any support on the weekends. So if you think you're going to need to text, call, chat with a support person, you have to do the $150 a year plus membership. And I'm not saying that, I mean, there's other software that's the same way, but like that was definitely like a feature was Sunday support for the plus membership. So in a sense, I think as a church, you really need to do that membership. It definitely had other things too. There was media and some templates and things like that. But $440 for a site license is, I would call that somewhere in the middle. And then the yearly subscription for the plus membership is not outrageous. So I think it's somewhere in the middle, so, cost wise. It's hard for me to say without really digging into it deeper. Is the cost benefit there?
All right. Give me your rating on that. Give me your rating on price first.
Yeah. I put like a 2 because for what I can see of the software, it was a little higher price than I would have expected, but it's a one-time cost thing. So after a few years of a subscription of something else, you're in the black. But I just, for buying it and using it right away, I was like, that's a little steep for what I'm seeing.
Okay. What about volunteer use?
I put an 8. Once again, it depends on your situation, how complex your presentations are, but it looked like you could get around it pretty easily. Like I said, I watched the video of them creating a presentation and opping a presentation, and it was very straightforward. It was not overly complicated. There was nothing that was really off-putting about the basics of creating and operating a presentation.
Okay. Would you use it?
No, I put a 1. It seems like it's missing a couple of things that we would definitely need. And like I said, the cost to perceived benefit, and I'll definitely put that caveat in there, is just not there for me personally.
Okay, good. All right, so let's move to Proclaim. And this one's definitely, so the 3 that we've dealt with are definitely more mainstream, kind of the 3 more top presentation software in the market. Proclaim is definitely an option that I've seen churches use. I have some kind of opinions on this one, or on all of them, but I'll share a couple things on Proclaim as we chat about this. But kind of give me an overview. Were you able to download this and look at this at all?
Yeah, I was. I have to say, I was pretty impressed with Proclaim. I have not used it in a production situation. I haven't sat down and like recreated my weekend presentations in it or anything like that. But first glance, first impressions, playing around with like what's in there in the demo and things like that, it was pretty impressive. It has some very cool features that I was like, yeah, I could see that.
Mac and PC.
It was Mac and PC. It's kind of it seems like it's sort of cloud. It's not cloud based. You're not in a web browser cloud software, but it is very reliant on the cloud. And so definitely something that I would be a big, humongous question of mine would be, so you just push updates whenever, you know what I mean? That would scare me.
Yeah. So that's my biggest, you're hitting on my biggest concern when I've talked to churches about using Proclaim. And I've talked to Faith Life about it and using it and whatever. But my biggest concern, if I were to use it as a church, is it is cloud based, including your media content that's connected to the cloud and your software. Now there are features to, okay, I'm going to download everything for Sunday, and now it's local and I can play it. But you have to take that extra step, from what I understand, and download that media content in there. Whereas they've kind of set it up where it's pulling that media from the cloud. I say that to say, if your internet goes down on Sunday morning,
and you haven't done your due diligence. And that is anything cloud, you know what I mean?
And the updates as well. Like,
so you're totally right. So that's a good thing to understand. I didn't maybe get that in the weeds with it, is that the media actually is living in the cloud unless you choose to download it, and then you got to have the bandwidth to pull all that down on a regular basis and things like that. But I was also just concerned, like, okay, if they go in and fix a bug,
are you pushing that bug live whenever you want to, or do I control it?
When do they push the bug? Do I get to choose? I mean, if my wife does something else that she uses some cloud software, and she'll be in the middle of her workday and they'll push an update, and all of a sudden they bricked a section of it. And this is a much larger organization than, these software development companies are. So that would make me nervous in a production sense to be using cloud software. And yeah, if your team is not diligent on pulling all that content down and being ready to be offline, yeah, that's pretty scary,
Right.
Internet connections are pretty stable these days, but we had it happen at our church right when I first got here that they were out digging on the road and they sliced right through our fiber line. It just,
right.
We were down for a week and a half.
Right.
We have a backup connection, but it's nowhere near as fast. And
right.
yeah, it definitely does happen. If you're a setup tear down sort of mobile church, that would be really scary because then you're either reliant on the local building that you're in, or you got like a little hotspot and who knows what that's going to be. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the biggest event that you do every week.
Oh man.
Is your worship experience.
We talk about it all the time. If you think of what we're doing as a pyramid, the tip of the pyramid, the tip of the spear is the weekend services. Like student ministries is super important. Small groups is super important. All the affinity ministries are super important, but the weekend services are the tip of the spear. And so if that is not your most stable, most reliable thing, you gotta,
which I would also argue the budget should probably, maybe this is self-serving,
yes.
but the budget should probably reflect that as well. This is the biggest thing that you do. It is the tip of the spear. It is. So to
it's definitely not the place to cheap out. It's not the place.
It's not the place to cheap out. That's what I'm getting
from
at,
the perspective we're looking at it for today. If you need to spend the money and say we're going to call ProPresenter the top of the pyramid here, spend the money on a single seat of ProPresenter for your main auditorium, and then you go with another product for the kids area and the student area because that works out financially for you. That might still be the right thing to do.
Right?
Stability and that, to me, stability and reliability and like the known factor trumps cool features in any day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If ProPresenter and all its features got to the point where it was unusable from a stability perspective, I would jump ship in a second.
Right.
Because I can't risk the weekend services on it. I can't.
Right.
And so, Proclaim, like I said, from a usability perspective and from a feature perspective, we can go through those things because I was impressed.
Yeah, hit on those. Hit on some pros.
So pros, the first thing that drew my eye, the digital signage section. Once again, I haven't actually used it, but to see that and like kind of, oh wow, that they have an app for an Amazon Fire Stick or a, you know what I mean? That I was like, man, could I even use that for digital signage? Because digital signage can be a real bear, especially in a really big facility. So that drew my eye right away.
Which could be an option. You could use ProPresenter for your main room, Proclaim for the signage. Like that wouldn't 100%. Bother me to be cloud-based and run that, and that wouldn't bother me.
Absolutely. SDI and NDI support, fantastic. MIDI integration, just, I think that should be there. The cloud-based collaboration theory, idea,
that is a pro.
It's awesome. You know what I mean? Especially for churches
pastor can do it in his office, or worship leader can do it in his office and push it over the cloud to that is a pro.
Yep. Yeah, especially smaller churches, you got bivocational pastors. There's nobody on staff. Everyone's working, like it's almost like COVID time. You're working remote. You know what I mean? And we got to like bring this whole thing together on Sunday morning. That could be a huge deal. You know what I mean? That could really be awesome. So once again, I haven't really used it fully baked in that situation, but from the looks of it, that's a cool feature.
Which that's where I do like the cloud-based stuff which I wish that other software almost had that a little bit more capability to do more remote work and push it in.
Right.
But I don't want to be dependent on the cloud on Sunday morning. Like I think there's a difference there. Would you agree?
Yep. I would. And with ProPresenter, we have some content creators that are sort of using it in a sense remotely, ProPresenter, like if you don't know this already, sometimes you're bundling, like when you export a bundle and it's got a lot of media, it hangs, it doesn't.
Yeah.
So, that's a way to do it within ProPresenter is to create a presentation and then export it as a Pro P bundle. But if you got a lot of media in there,
it's
got issues. You know what I mean? So ProPresenter, please be listening. That would be a huge fix for us because we like our kids area is very, very multimedia driven, and we are constantly having issues with Pro P bundles crashing machines because they just can't import or export them because they're too big or something.
Right. You almost have to do those locally on that machine.
And that's where we've landed is we just kind of remote into the machines and build the presentations locally. So a couple other pros. I loved the stage display quick messages where you can just have like a pre-made message, just goes like drops it down, just like fix your mic, click, and it just boop puts it on the stage display. Like ProPresenter, there's a feature like have a little quick, like a little message that you can have pre-baked, like your quick responses on your phone. That was cool. It looked like they had some very nice pre-built templates and common items like for announcements or things like that. Like if you're just real quick, you need to throw something together, they all look pretty decent. The recording, the audio recording feature that's baked right into it. So if you feed your feedback into it, you can record your pastor. It literally has the start and stop cue built into the calendar, the playlist, and then you can publish it to certain podcasting platforms pretty easily right through the software. I was like, for some churches, that would be like a one-stop shop sort of situation. Once again, does it really work perfectly? It's hard for me to say, but I think that's a cool feature. And then there seemed like there was some really interesting congregation interaction features that integrate with Logos, which is the parent company, I think. And then they had some survey options and things like that, which especially for some smaller, medium-sized churches, those can be really a big win. And so I thought that was all really, really cool. On the con side, first one, I would be a bit nervous with cloud-based software. You know what I mean? There's definitely that nervous factor. I would be really interested to talk to somebody that's using this in production and find out their thoughts and their reliability.
Yeah, I've talked with folks that use it. They haven't had much of a problem. Right. I think they've had more stable internet.
Right.
So, I mean, I've talked with users. They seem to like it. They like that cloud capability that I can do a lot of stuff remotely. Honestly, still makes me nervous. That's kind of where I'm at. It only takes once.
There's cloud things. Yeah, there's cloud things that we use that I'm like. Spotify makes me nervous. You know what I mean? Right. When it's like, so I offline everything on Spotify. We use TeamViewer like as our left arm. You know what I mean? Like we use TeamViewer because we have so many machines, so many locations throughout multiple buildings all over the place. But it's in a sense it's cloud based. You know what I mean? It's not centrally. Right. We don't have the server on site. So if the internet's down, I really can't remote into stuff easily. There's right. ways around it, but it's problematic. Yeah, there are a lot of things that we do that the internet going down is an inconvenience. I can't think of anything right now that the internet going down stops our services at our church in the auditorium on a Sunday.
Right, like that.
This could, it seems, and that would make me nervous.
Okay,
and then the other con was just the update. The update thing, like I said, when do they push updates? How does that break something? Does it break hardware integration? Like, there's just no way to know.
All right, talk to me about cost.
Yeah, so cost breakdown, it was $250 a year for just the base software, which is fully featured. There weren't any features missing from that cost bracket. $380 a year added the Pro Media Library, which is like their Faith Life's Pro library of media. And then you jump way up to $930 a year. That is with their Pro Media Library and what they call Partner Media Library, which looks like it could be cool. There's collections from Hillsong, Church Motion Graphics, Dan Stevers, FreeBridge, a couple other, content creation platforms that if that bundles together and nets out to save you money there, that is, I think, that could be a great deal for a church. So yeah, I would love for somebody to like really put my heart at ease about the cloud thing. And then it's like, yeah, dude, this could be really legit. It looks great. Like the UI was very appealing to me. I got around it quickly. The on-air button thing was a little like, that's not what I would have used, but it's just a terminology thing. It's no different than audio consoles using different terminology. So it seemed like, especially if you're a church, like I said, that has like no on-site staff or your pastors are bivocational and things like that, this could be a big deal. It looked like there was like a sermon slide building wizard that your pastor could use to kind of build their sermon slides and pull in verses and format it a little more, design driven. And so it has a lot of positives.
So I should probably disclaimer here. You mentioned the media library. So our church visuals media content is in multiple libraries, including these presentation software. So I want people to know that like we sell our media content on our site as well as these media libraries. And so, but I do want your kind of third party overview on these, just to kind of give a good perspective of pros and cons on each. Okay, give me your rating scale on Proclaim. Price. What's your play button rating for price?
I put a 8. I mean, once again, with the big caveat of how does it work with the cloud and the reliability factor. I think for what you're getting and all the long list of pro features that I listed off there, I think that's a solid price, and if that highest tier with the partner media library, if you can kind of break down, if I also had a subscription to CMG and bought stuff from Dan Stevers once a year and things like that, I'd spend blah, blah, blah. Like that really could be a good thing. So I think it's a good COI if I had to guess.
All right. Give me volunteer user friendliness.
I also put an 8. I mean, look, messing around with it, like I got through it very quickly. It made sense to me. Nothing stood out that I was like, wow, that's goofy. Probably the only thing that to me was like the whole like going on air just took a second to kind of go, oh, okay. So even if I'm on a slide, I have to go on air for the output to click in, and there's kind of a different view. But I thought it was pretty user friendly. I thought.
What about, would you use it at my church? Would the cloud thing really knock you out, or would you use it?
From a weekend service perspective, currently without like a ton of experience with it, I would say yes, it would probably knock me out of it. But like in our children's area where, they're very media driven, but if it doesn't work, it's not like they're like, well, tell a big church to close down and parents going to come get their kids. We can't have church.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's a major inconvenience, but it's not a deal breaker. Who knows? Like this might be a great solution because we do need collaborative,
right,
content creation in that part of our ministry. And so,
would you give it?
I give it a 7 because, like I said,
you could use it in some areas.
I could use it in some areas for sure. And I legitimately want to do a little more research into this for just those couple of places where it's like, man, some collaborative things, some this, that, the digital signage thing. I mean,
right.
I pay way more than $250 a year in subscriptions for our current digital signage system. Right. So if this, if I can stick a $30 Amazon Fire Stick behind a TV and it becomes a digital sign, that
right,
cool,
right, yep. Okay, so man, thank you for doing this. I know, sure. We've kind of, this is a longer episode, and I'm glad that we have, because I want people to really kind of dig into each and figure out what's right for their church. So let me ask you a couple kind of closing questions here. Based on your review of these, give me your top 2 choices. Maybe it might fall into, if I'm a Mac house or a PC house, maybe it doesn't matter, like guys like you that can kind of use either one, but give me your top couple of choices.
Yeah, I mean, my definite top 2 choices would be ProPresenter and Proclaim. Once again, like love it or hate it, ProPresenter wise, I know they put a bad taste in people's mouths with the kind of transition to 6 from 6 to 7, but that's going to happen when you make those sort of transitions. It is the industry leader, love it or hate it. And there is a lot of benefits to being in that platform, to having people that know that, if you all of a sudden come up against, say your church is, at a size where you don't need a lot of those features, and you're using some other piece of software, and then all of a sudden you start to grow and all of a sudden you need some of the features that ProPresenter offers.
Right.
Now you're going to retrain.
Now it's going to be a major transition to move your volunteers.
But that is still not a reason to just go, you shouldn't use anything but ProPresenter. I am absolutely not saying that. Like I just said, I was very impressed with Proclaim. But if you can afford it, I think it still is, I would say, on the whole, the best option. And on the affording side, and I love what you said, like, man, if you're going to put your money anywhere, like put it into your weekend services. Like for any pastors or like leadership that are listening, I'm a production guy, so I get it. I'm biased, but man, like I know of churches that cheap out on the weekend services, and they have nothing but issues. And I'm one of the people that they end up calling, going, "Can you help us?"
Right.
And I go there, and it's like, wow, you guys have a super cool student center. Like, you spend a lot of money on that, and you're like just absolutely scraping the barrel for the weekend stuff. And I'm like, you got to put some budget into it.
Sometimes it's like you have 50. I mean, this is not always the case, but like you have 50 kids over there, and then over here you have 500 people every week.
Right.
You know, it's kind of lopsided.
At Connection Point, student ministry is humongously important. I mean, it is one of the tenets of the church that we are, one of our distinctives is that we're trying to raise the strongest generation. So it is a massive deal. It's a huge part of our budget, but it is still, in comparison to the weekend services, it's in the right place. You know what I mean? Like, the weekend services are still the most important thing. And it's not that the pastor is the most important part. That's not what it is. The weekend services is the doorway to the whole church. And I think it's just, you have to have that level of priority there.
Yeah.
If you want to be a church that's growing and that's reaching people and things like that. You know, once again, I don't know everything, but that's my take on it. And I'm biased because I'm a production guy.
I am too. So. That's why it's tough to say because it sounds so self-serving and biased. But I mean, this is the major event that we do every single week. It is what we invite people to. It is what we, if there's an outreach, I mean, this is what we bring people to. So, all right, if budget is a concern for me, which one should be my concern? Would you go all the, to the cheapest option, or would you go middle of the line? Which one would you choose if budget was a concern?
I think there's a little bit of nuance in there. I think one of the big first questions I would ask is how many computers do you actually need to present on? You know what I mean? Because then you can get into the single license versus site license breakdowns.
Right.
If it's a single license, you have a couple choices in here. But very quickly, if it's a yearly subscription, so let's say it's one of the cheaper options, but it's a yearly subscription, that $400 single site license for ProPresenter. And then if you get in on a stable version and you're happy with it after that first year and you don't want to pay the yearly update fee and you want to just stay where you're at, that's totally legit.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think that's an option too. So I think it comes with some nuance. I mean, if I had to choose it from the cheaper options, once again, with the caveat of the stability of it, Proclaim is probably the most fully featured. After that, it's probably EasyWorship. I don't want to knock too hard on MediaShout. If I was out shopping, I would have probably dropped it off my list just because it was hard to find out what it was. You know what I mean? And to really see it in action and things like that. So I would love to know more about it. I would, let's put it this way. I don't think any of these pieces of software would be out there and have the budget to be marketing and things like that, and would even float to the top to be on your podcast if there weren't people using them that were happy with it. So they are all doing what they're supposed to do. There's no question about it.
Yeah,
we're really into the weeds of the different features. And things
we are.
Like
yeah.
So
okay, when you were doing your research, which ones have the best training available for my volunteers?
So I am actually a proponent more so of volunteer to volunteer training. I think formal training is great, but it doesn't meet like your needs. Like it's not like your church. So,
or maybe support, maybe.
Sure. Yes. If I had to pick one, it would probably be ProPresenter as well, just because there's so many people that use it. You go on YouTube, you're going to find every possible scenario of use of ProPresenter and ones that I would not even recommend. You know what I mean? Like because it's the largest, there's the biggest user base. So there's the most people having all the experiences. And then more percentage of those people are going to put it out there on the internet for you to find.
Yeah.
They do also have great training resources. I think they've always done a nice job of creating training resources online and things like that. So I don't think it's lacking in any way there.
Yeah.
But I just think, if you got a problem, I mean, I'm the first person to say, just go type that sentence into YouTube. And for ProPresenter, statistically, you're going to find the most options there.
Right.
So,
man, you've done such a thorough job here. I really appreciate it. I think it's really going to help a lot of people to try to figure out which is the best fit for their church. So let me leave us with this. Why is it important to present my visuals well? Why do my visuals matter?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, like we've talked about a couple times just a minute ago, like the weekend services are the tip of the spear for any church. And I think presentation matters because people are used to seeing good stuff, whether we like it or not. All of us have the cheesometer in our head. All of us have the, wow, that's really, like I said, I watched this web commercial. It was a video on YouTube, and it was like, to find more information, call 61 blah blah. And it was like, wow, that immediately I was like taken back to 2005 or something, or maybe even before then. If your church media looks like a PowerPoint presentation and you're using cheesy transition wipes and rainbow backgrounds and things like that, the next generation, the generation below you coming up into the church is just going to be thrown for a tailspin. For an example, we brought in a person to do some training for our staff on some worldview topics and things like that. And the content was amazing. The presentation visuals were 30 years old, and there wasn't a person in the room under the age of 40 that was like even giving any attention to it whatsoever. It's sad. It shouldn't be the way it is, but it just is the way it is, especially for a newcomer. You want them to come in and go, man, this is put together. Wow, this looks like what I'm seeing out there in the world. We don't want to be the world, but we need to be part of it. You know what I mean? In a sense that when people come in, it's attractive and it's relevant to our current culture. And presentation is a huge part of that. I think if pastors are still like really caught up in having like tons of pictures and visuals, and every noun they say, there's got to be a picture up there and things like that, I think that the style of things has moved beyond that to a much more clean, much more simplistic, much more minimalist feel. And that takes design work, because like to do it minimalist, but also not look like chintzy and cheap, there's a real fine line there between like minimalism and like cheapo PowerPoint, Arial font. And it's a very fine line. And some of the software that we've looked at have great templates. You know what I mean? That's probably one, maybe that's the knock against ProPresenter, is they don't do as much as some of these other pieces of software in pre-built templates, because they expect that you're going to just create your own stuff. You know what I mean? That's why we love it. We have graphics designers. We have all these people behind us doing all this great content work. If you don't have that, maybe one of these other options is better for you, because it does have, I would say on the whole, probably more pre-baked templating and things like that. So, But yeah, presentation is super, super, super important. If I'm sitting there watching a message, or even during worship, and there's an issue with the presentation, nothing will take you out of worship faster. I mean, I'm not going to throw too much shade at worship leaders out there, but the digital worship leader, the person who's sitting behind, hitting the space button, if they stop hitting that space button, how many of our musicians on stage aren't going to know the lyrics to a song?
Correct.
Let alone the congregation who doesn't,
stops,
who hasn't been rehearsing this for a week. And so presentation is everything. And this software has to be, and that's where I said, like, ProPresenter, just like Planning Center and just like other platforms that churches use, we've built our world around it. Maybe that was a bad idea, and we might pay the price for that at some point. But right now it's what we got. And I think it's good. I mean, I give the guys at Renewed Vision a lot of credit that they have been, the impact that they've had on the church, capital C, you know what I mean, has been immense. You know what I mean? They've taken us to a whole nother level. And so, and these other softwares are part of that movement as well. I think it's all kind of a collective keeping the church relevant in this world. Yeah.
Well, man, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. I know you've, I have guests on that haven't had to do as much work as you to kind of prepare for this. So, man, I'm very, very grateful for your research and pouring into this. I know it's going to help a lot of people. So, man, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Hey, pastor, youth leader, worship leader, ministry leader, in whatever ways that you might be filling that role. I want to take a second. First off, introduce myself. My name is JT. I'm one of the video producers here at Church Visuals. And I also want to let you know how thankful I am for you and the work that you're doing building the kingdom of God. Your work matters, and it's so much a part of the reason why I do as a video producer, which is to come alongside you and help you reach as many people as you can with the gospel of Jesus Christ. So once again, we're thankful for you, we're thinking of you, we're praying for you, and your visuals matter.
Hey friends, as we wrap this week's episode, here's your takeaway. Here's your church visuals tip of the week. Don't use PowerPoint. Use a presentation software that is built for the worship experience. I recommend ProPresenter, EasyWorship, or MediaShout, one of those three. So choose one of those and spend the money on the site license for it. I promise this is an area that you don't want to skimp on. If your visuals really do matter, your presentation software matters. I would raise the money through a bake sale or a capital campaign or something to get you there. If you want to reach the people that you want to reach for Jesus, your visuals matter. Be sure to like this episode of the show and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow us on social media at Church Visuals, and I'll see you next week. Your Visuals Matter has been a podcast presentation of Church Visuals. Executive produced by Carl Barnhill, edited by AJ Schubert, title and show graphics by Angie Lomas. For more resources to help you visually communicate the gospel, visit churchvisuals.com.